Meet Bill Laimbeer, the dirtiest player in NBA history. What if I told you that there was an NBA player that didn't give a damn about laws, decency, or even respect? A guy who made soccer players look honest by tackling opponents, flinging elbows, and flopping so hard? Legends like Larry Bird and Michael Jordan wanted to fight him right away because he was so filthy. The dirtiest player in NBA history, Bill Laimbeer, is the subject of this tale. A man like this would have been raised fighting in the streets, wouldn't he? False. Bill Laimbeer came from a wealthy family. His father was a wealthy and accomplished executive. Bill Laimbeer, though, wasn't a genius. He coasted through life, pampered, till he was struck by reality. His basketball career was ruined for over 2 years when he failed Notre Dame as a freshman. Additionally, he was only scoring 7 points and pulling down 6 rebounds per game when he eventually made a comeback, so he wasn't exactly lighting up the court. Both the league and the scouts were unimpressed. As a result, Laimbeer was not a particularly attractive prospect when the 1979 NBA draft arrived, and teams hardly took note of him. He was just another name on a list, falling all the way to the 3rd round and the Cavaliers' 65th overall. Because Bill Laimbeer wasn't particularly quick or athletic and didn't like flashy post moves like the NBA's best centers, the Cavaliers never saw greatness in him. Rather, he played his own game, fighting for every rebound and making baskets like a guard. Even though he averaged a respectable 10 points and 8 rebounds as a rookie, Cleveland was hesitant to even extend an offer of a contract, and by the time they did, they still didn't quite understand his potential. Jack McCloskey, the general manager of Detroit, noticed a change when the Pistons played the Cavaliers. Despite the fact that the game was a landslide, one player persisted. Cleveland's center outworked everyone on the floor by putting his body into every play as if the score were tied. It was impossible to overlook that kind of play. Bill Laimbeer joined rookie Isaiah Thomas at the following trade deadline after McCloskey made his move, and Laimbeer was a force in Detroit.
Say Detroit Pistons to you, what reaction do you have?
The cheap shot artist, with Laimbeer, when you say Detroit, that's what comes to my mind.
Not very many good thoughts, that's for sure.
Bill Laimbeer was initially a target rather than the league's biggest villain.
Nice incident in the 4th quarter in which Scottie Pippen took down Bill Laimbeer. After that,
Laimbeer averaged 14 points and 12 rebounds in his first full season with the Pistons, 1982-1983, earning him an all-star selection. However, his notoriety wasn't what it would become at the time. In the beginning, men would punch him in the face rather than merely challenge him, and he took it for a time until he retaliated one day. All of a sudden, Laimbeer and the so-called tough guys weren't so tough anymore. In basketball, he became the most despised individual. According to Isaiah Thomas, Laimbeer was the center of the notorious bad boys of the Detroit Pistons by the middle of the 1980s. They were a gang, the Pistons. Their hitman was Laimbeer. Players knew going into every game that if Laimbeer was present, there would be pain.
Lamb gets fouled hard by Dennis Rodman. No problem there, but there's the problem. Laimbeer with the ball in Mahorn's face.
Laimbeer led the mayhem, but Isaiah Thomas spearheaded the attack. His area of expertise? Inexpensive shots, severe infractions, psychological conflict. From elbows to ribs? Typical. In the middle of shoving opponents? Typical. However, acting was his real talent. He was an expert at making flops.
Here, maybe one of the great floppers of all time, Bill Laimbeer.
He felt like he had been struck by a truck the moment someone touched him. What about the referees? They were duped, each and every time. In Game 3 against the Celtics, the savagery reached a new level when Robert Parrish elbowed Laimbeer in the face and then floored him again after he stood up. Let's not pretend that Parrish was spotless, but Laimbeer wasn't innocent either. The Pistons and Celtics became lifelong rivals at this point. Pistons general manager Jack McCloskey made 2 pivotal decisions in 1986. He traded for strong, courageous big man Rick Mahorn and selected cold-blooded scorer Joe Dumars. Bill Laimbeer at last had a bodyguard in the trenches with Mayhorn at his side. That season, Laimbeer was the league leader in rebounds, pulling down 13 a game while scoring 16.5 points per game. However, when the playoffs arrived, the Pistons lost to the Hawks in the opening round, even though Laimbeer was playing at a scorching 22 points and 14 rebounds per game. This harsh reality check laid the groundwork for their merciless development. The Pistons improved in 1987. They selected two tenacious enforcers, John Sally and Dennis Rodman, and traded Kelly Tripucka for Adrian Dantley, a two-time scoring champion. The outcome? 52 victories, a franchise record, with 15 points, 12 rebounds, and an unprecedented 89. Bill Laimbeer was a beast. Percent free throw shooting, a center's NBA record. Like a wrecking crew, Detroit dominated the first two rounds of the playoffs. The Celtics in the Eastern Finals presented the true test. The first two games were won by Boston. In Game 3, Detroit retaliated, and Laimbeer, he dominated the evening and established the tone for a historic clash. Bill Laimbeer made a poor move by hard fouling Larry Bird, sending him flying to the ground. Bird was fed up with him. As the audience went wild, he tackled Laimbeer and began to swing, landing
on the ground, and Mike Abdinell runs out and hits him with the smelling salts. And you know what the first thing Laimbeer said was? He went, "They throw him out?"
Bird was sent out by the referees, and the Pistons secured the victory without him. But he had other battles. Throughout the entire series, Laimbeer had been promoting Robert Parrish.
Scotty, how much of a personal thing is there going on between you and Bill Laimbeer?
We don't like each other. I see him out on the court, and I know every opportunity that he get me that he's going to take a cheap shot, and I will let him.
Parrish lost it this time. Twice he dropped Laimbeer. He was suspended by the league for Game 6, but was not expelled for whatever reason. His absence was exploited by Detroit, who forced a painful Game 7 in Boston. Bird and Parrish were ejected after Laimbeer's mind tricks had already taken 2 victories. But Bird delivered when it counted most. Despite Detroit outscoring the Celtics throughout the series, he led them to another finals trip in a close contest. The Pistons, however, were enraged, not just near. They returned with greater ruthlessness and danger than before in 1988. The Detroit Pistons used psychological warfare in place of defense. They crushed opponents from baseline to baseline with a 94 frivolous downtown sign by 4-foot press, shattering the NBA's unwritten rules under Chuck Daly's leadership. Other teams were cautious, jogging back and allowing offenses to get established. Chaos arrived with Detroit, bone-rattling screens, full-court pressure, and unrelenting physicality. The league's greatest villain, Bill Laimbeer, was at the center of the chaos. He caused pain rather than just fouling. Nothing was forbidden, including hip checks, forearms to the ribs, and cheap mid-air shots. And his trademark move? Daring shooters to land on broken ankles, he slid his feet beneath them. He literally turned himself into a highly despised player on his own. The Pistons, however, were indifferent. Being liked wasn't their goal. Their harshness worked, and their goal was to win. Furthermore, Bill was aware that he wasn't the best player on the floor. He was aware that his ability to enter his opponents' minds and cause them to crack was his true weapon. He had already won by the time they were more concerned with retaliation than with scoring. What about the media? They were his collaborators. When the Pistons came into a town, all the media would write about were the bad boys and how rough we played. In an attempt to demonstrate that they were not scared, opposing players became enmeshed in the excitement. However, Laimbeer had them the moment they turned their attention from the scoreboard to him. The game is over. Detroit came into the 1988 playoffs determined to wreak havoc. They had the second-best defense in the NBA, a franchise record 54 victories, and an unmatched appetite. They started by steamrolling the Bullets. They then sent a message that the league was no longer Michael Jordan's playground by giving him his first serious playoff thumping. The Celtics come next. For 4 years in a row, they ruled the East. However, Detroit refused to submit. Bill Laimbeer clarified it before Game 1. He went over to the Celtics' leprechaun logo in center court, spat on it, and then used his sneaker to rub it in. It made no difference that the Boston audience was frothing at the mouth. In 6 games, Detroit destroyed the Celtics. Detroit was the beast of the East for the first time in 31 years. However, one player detested him the most: Michael Jordan, the best ever. However, he had a significant issue with Bill Laimbeer and the Detroit Pistons before dominating the NBA, and that's the story of Bill Laimbeer, the man who turned basketball into a battlefield. He wasn't the most skilled, he wasn't the fastest, but he didn't need to be. By bending the rules, breaking bones, and living rent-free in the heads of legends, Laimbeer carved out a place in history as the dirtiest player the NBA has ever seen. Love him or hate him, one thing's for sure: without Bill Laimbeer, the Bad Boys Pistons would never have become the ruthless dynasty that changed basketball forever.